Cue that beat.
This is what happens. You guys just hear something Eagles, and then it's like a dog. You see a squirrel, it's just,
I would say 75% of all NFL quarterbacks can be dialed down to different flavors of Kirk Cousins. They're all just Kirk Cousins. All of them.
So there's conditions. No, I absolutely understand do not draft list. If someone's on my do not draft list, I'm not drafting him.
Welcome into the Mind the Gap podcast. I'm Tyler Hill, along with Ryan Wright and Aaron Palsgrove. Today is a big episode. This is our Big Board 2.0, which is our top 100-ish. Because of the way we do our big boards, which we will get to in a second, we all do our individual top 100s, and then it gets smashed together. So we ended up with more like about 110 to 120. But this is a lot of work that went into this, a lot of film watch, stats looked at, graphs and charts looked at to smash all these players together to spit out our top 100. We're really proud of it. To explain the big board formula, well, before I get into that, I'm just going to ask you guys how you're doing.
I mean, this is a draft show. This is a draft website now. By the way, go check out our website. I don't know if we ever actually posted it on socials, but you should check it out. We have our latest linebackers article, and all of our shows are going to be there as well. This is a draft show. Are we going to talk about Paige Beckers, number 1 overall?
She did. Dallas Wings.
Yeah. Dallas needs a little bit of good luck. They traded away Luka.
That's just aging poorly, you know? And I think we knew that when it happened, but
yeah,
not a great – really just the whole Dallas sports scene is not in a great spot right now, at least professional sports-wise. So
I was listening to Zach Lowe, who, thank goodness he's back. I missed his content. When he was on a pod, I think with Kirk Goldsberry or Mark Stein, one of the two of them, and they were talking about how this Luka trade is less equatable to an other NBA trades and more. It's closer to like Seattle leaving Seattle, the Supersonics. It's closer to a team relocating, the Rams moving to LA, than it is to trading a superstar, and it's going to set Dallas back like 10, 15 years. It's unreal.
If we're really comparing it to something, maybe the Louisiana Purchase could also be us getting Alaska from Russia when they didn't know that there was gold and oil there, right? When we're talking about some all-time trades, I think that's more akin to what we're looking at here.
Oh my gosh.
History buff over here. Ryan, just break down for me all the work that went into your top 100. Because again, ranking 100 players, that's so many that you have to go over, and you're splitting hairs, especially when you get into the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and going on down. So just walk me through your process.
Yeah, so, I mean, we had a very long process. This took about a little over 4 months. We started the podcast back in January, and this has been a slow process, but I feel like it's more thorough because we are able to highlight every single player in every single position group, really up until like the 4th or 5th round. It's very in depth, and I'm excited to see what happens with the mock draft that we're going to do on Monday, because that's going to be our last episode before the draft, and then we can get into post-draft stuff and kind of what does it mean.
Exactly. Draft's coming up here really soon. This has flown by. I can remember when we were doing Senior Bowl stuff, we were doing Shrine Bowl stuff, and now we're here about 2 weeks away from the draft. So just getting into how we do our big boards. Like I said, all 3 of us make a top 100, and then Aaron takes all of our players that we have ranked and smashes them together. So for example, if there is a player that I ranked 1, Aaron ranked 2, and Ryan ranked 3. Those numbers go together. Aaron divides it by 3, spits out the number 2, and then we rank all of the players by those averages. And so there's not anyone who is just 1 even. Travis Hunter, our number 1 player, for example, is 1.333. And so that's the highest number we have, though. And so he is ranked as our consensus number 1 player. Same thing happened with Abdul Carter. Go on down the board, and that is how we actually got into this top 100. So this is not reflective of our individual boards. This is our consensus of all 3 of us top 100.
Which it really does throw some things into both perspective and out of whack, because all 3 of us have very differing opinions. very differing opinions at times. We were talking before show about some stuff we need to hit on, highlight. I mean, there is some 50 place swings in here. Alec A.O. Manor we'll talk about maybe later. I don't know. Receiver out of Stanford, right? Yes, receiver out of Stanford. I have him at 50 overall, and Ryan has him at 100. Tyler has him at 79 for an average score of 76.33, which puts him on our big board. Where did Alec end up? I think he's in the 70s, right?
I think you're right.
76. 76 right ahead of Damian Martinez and Xavier Restrepo, as he should be. But it's just some crazy stuff. And, I mean, Tyler, you gave me 99 guys because you accidentally put one twice. I gave myself 123. Ryan gave me 143. And so just narrowing down these lists, and by the end of it, I combined all of our, 299 players between 100 to 199, and we ended up with 120 individual players. So how do we cut out those last 20? That's why we use the score.
Exactly. So without further ado, after explaining to it, let's get into it. The very first thing, I opened up the big board with the math today, and what stood out was Cam Ward is a near top 10 player. He's at 11 overall and is our number one quarterback by 36 spots. The next closest is Jackson Dart, quarterback out of Ole Miss. So in this class, at least in our opinion, very clearly the QB1. There's no one else who is even close to him. Overall, that's a 6-spot rise from where we had Ward last time. But really looking back and just thinking back on, as Ryan said, some of those January episodes, some of the first ones we ever did, we were not super high on Ward. At that point, I had him at 13, but he was teetering, especially for you, Ryan. You were, I think, had the most question marks initially of any of us when it came to Cam Ward. It's looking like he's going to be the number one pick. Have you come around to Ward being worthy of that first pick? Because you also said that if you were the Titans at that time, you would be looking to trade out instead of taking him. So if you're the Titans GM now, what are you doing?
Of course, I'm getting called on. I still have him the lowest out of the three of us. But, guys,
Where do you have him? Where'd you end up with him on this second board?
16.
16? So he did rise for you. Last board
I
he
had
was
him at 17.
17 for you, 12 for Tyler, 15 for me. And then I had him on this latest board. He rose for me way more than I was expecting him
9.
to.
Yep.
Yeah.
So as far as the number one pick goes, you see the poise out of a young man that you want to be a leader on your team. I can't say the same for some of these other quarterbacks. I see some cocky and arrogant quarterbacks on this list. I see some older guys that probably should not be draft eligible. But it's really hard for me personally to take Cam Ward number one, knowing he's the 16th best player in the class. I understand QB value. I understand everything that goes into it. If I want to get my money's worth for the number one overall pick, I'm trading down because I am not going to draft Cam Ward with the number one overall pick.
So let me riddle me this, Mr. Wright. I had Ward the highest of the three of us. I had him at 9, and that helped to get him to 11, sniffing the top 10. And I rose really highly on him because I took something into consideration when making this board that I didn't as much with the last one, and that is positional value, right? More than just, okay, running backs are not as valuable as maybe a defensive end or maybe as a cornerback. More than that, I took into account how valuable is a talented wide receiver like Matthew Golden or a talented quarterback like Cam Ward. And that's why he rose for me above some other positions, because I thought, what's more valuable, Cam Ward or whoever I had behind him? Who did I have behind Cam Ward? I had Mikael Williams. Who's more valuable, him or Jahdae Barron? Who's more valuable, him or the raw prospect that is Shamar Stewart? And I just kept saying, it's Ward. It's Ward. It's Ward, because I'm not worried about him. I'm not worried about his floor, to be honest. Like, I feel like he is, you're right, Ryan, maybe not the most deserving number one overall pick that we've seen. If he is the inevitable number one overall pick, he might not be the best ever. He might not be Andrew Luck, Trevor Lawrence. But I do think he, as the number one quarterback in this class, which we all agree is an absolute lock, does deserve to be the number one quarterback taken, has earned the spot to be top 10. He's that talented of a player. He is a freaky athlete. And if you can just get consistent and freaky, that's an all-pro, Pro Bowl level player. I backed up. Don't worry.
No, I'm with you, Aaron, and I guess it just comes to how much you value quarterback, because right now Levis just doesn't have it. I'm operating on the fact that Levis is not going to be a good quarterback. So right now the Titans don't have a feasible starter unless you are just throwing a guy out there. So I think the quarterback value, I have him, I believe at either 12 or 13, is enough to push him to that number one pick range, especially because you just don't know if you're going to be in this position again. Right. And so even if you do get a nice haul from New York, from maybe if Cleveland wants to jump to get that number one pick, just name X team there, you're probably going to have to trade that to get back into a position to select the number one quarterback in a class. And so for me, it just comes down to, I just wouldn't overthink it. I would get your quarterback now, and you got that second round pick. You can take another O lineman. You can take a tight end right now. For us in that range would be like an Elijah Arroyo. You could take a wide receiver in that range. We have Jalen Noel and Higgins, both from Iowa State. Trey Harris, some other guys are in that second round range. Jalen Royals, or a running back, Henderson, Trey Henderson from Ohio State, Quinshon Judkins from Ohio State, or Cam Scadaboo. Those are some of the guys that are in that range. So you can add pieces after you've already added pieces in free agency. So I think that's what got me there, is he's a good enough quarterback to be worthy of a number one pick in this class. And that's all that matters. He doesn't have to be a number one pick in last class, just this 2025 class, which seems like a duh. But I think coming off of last year and the level of prospects we have, it can skew how we're looking at it.
I mean, we've used it as a prompt. Where would we rank this guy? That was in our entire quarterbacks episode. Where would we rank this guy in accordance to last year's class? Behind Bo Nix, ahead of Michael Penix, right behind Drake May and Jaden Daniels. Where would we rank him? And that's, I think, what Cam Ward is having to deal with. Whereas if you take last class out of it, I think he's a quality draft pick and a quality prospect. He has warts, sure. All the quarterbacks in this class do. He has less than others, and he has a crazy high ceiling.
Quality, yes, but when you're picking number one overall, you need to pick best player available. And that's what I was saying. Value-wise, I would trade down.
There is no position more valuable in sports than a quarterback. Why
Correct,
not take?
But why is that pick more valuable if Cam Ward is the 16th best player in the class?
Because Cam Ward is the best quarterback in the class. That's what we're arguing.
So
and because
you're the Titans. You're betting on the fact that you're going to be here again next year.
But you should.
Even if you're number two, you're still going to get a good player. This team is in full rebuild, so they need to pick best player available.
Number two is the difference between Cam Ward and Shadur Sanders. That's a heck of a difference. We don't know.
Well, in
what
this
next
class, it's Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter.
Right, they're blue chip prospects. We're saying Cam Ward, as the best quarterback, deserves to be in the conversation, and I think deserves to go number one. He's deserving of the spot, and it's a good pick if they take it. It's no nonsense.
It's just a bet, because you're betting that if Cam Ward is a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, that will actually make you win more games than if Abdul Carter is a top 10 edge in the NFL. Ryan's just saying that, hey, like, I'm just way more sold on a Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, whoever you have there at number one, I guess, getting you more wins than Cam Ward would. But man, it's tough, especially it's tough to tell your owner, like, we'll just wait until next year and be kind of bad again and tank.
I'd rather hit on a prospect I know is going to perform at a high level, like Carter, Hunter, Genty, Jackson, rather than Cam Ward.
But then you're signing up for another year of Will
assurance
Levis.
Thing.
You're signing up for another year of Will Levis. No one wants to do that. Fans, owners, players, that's how you lose a locker room, and that's how you lose the fans of your franchise. You at least have to try to compete.
No, you don't. They're tanking.
They tanked to get this pick. Now they have to make the most of it.
Why not get it 2 years in a row?
Because that's
this
not how
team
the
is
NFL
in utter
works.
Shambles. They could absolutely
Drew
use
Lock
it.
randomly won a game for the Giants, and now the Giants fell into the number 3 instead of the number 1, and now they couldn't get Cam Ward. Crazy stuff happens.
Very crazy storyline.
That's what I'm saying. Crazy stuff happens, and now the Giants aren't going to get Cam Ward, and Titans can. They need to capitalize on this while they're here and get their quarterback of the future. If it fails, they tried. If it doesn't, they have a quarterback for the next 10 years.
Okay, but we've also talked about how much better next year's class is. I think there's at least 15 guys that are worthy of, like, the first 3 rounds.
15 quarterbacks?
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
We think. That's the key there.
Hypothetically.
We think. Like,
How many of these guys did we talk about as like way too early top 10 players that fell to like
people,
60?
I remember people were psyched about Quinn Ewers at this time
Right.
last year. They were like, it's okay. The quarterback class is bad, but Quinn Ewers will probably be the number one pick. And it just doesn't materialize. But I think we've gotten to a point where we've talked this one a little bit to death, and I don't think we're convincing anybody here. So we're going to talk about some other QBs. Again, very clearly for us, Cam Ward out of Miami is the QB1. The other QBs we have on our list is Ole Miss quarterback Jackson Dart at 47, Colorado quarterback Shedeur Sanders at 53, Alabama quarterback Jalen Milroe at 64, and then Louisville quarterback Tyler Shuck just missing the cut at 102. But I figured since we had him on the board.
Brutal.
It is brutal. Ryan is low. He's 26. But just figured I'd throw him in there because we had him on the list. So of those 4 quarterbacks, and I'll even give you another one if you guys ended up being super, super high on a Kyle McCord or something like that. Who are you the most comfortable spending a first-round pick on, and what's their ideal landing spot? Aaron, we'll start with you.
Okay. Shedeur Sanders is who I'm most comfortable with. He is just the guy I'm most comfortable could succeed at the NFL level. As a singular prospect, as a player on a football field, take off the nameplate, take off the Rolex, stop the Dion train. All we're talking about is Shedeur Sanders as a quarterback, and I want him to go to a team like the Rams where they can build him up, give him a year to rest. Maybe not the Rams. They've been my favorite team to mock quarterbacks to. Maybe, I don't know, who has a quarterback on the waning years of their contract? I don't know.
Well, for me, I had Sanders as well, spoiler alert. I had him at Pittsburgh being the best landing spot at 21.
Pittsburgh's locker room feels weird. I had the same thought. That just feels like an odd place for him. I'll just say the Rams for now, and I'll stick to it. I think Sanders is a quality quarterback. I do. I think he's going to succeed. I think he's going to be, at the very least, a backup for the next 15 years because he has that Brock Purdy-esque game manager type game. And I just think he's a quality passer with a really high football IQ who does not throw many interceptable balls. He's got a lot of issues. Sacks being one of them. He is unathletic and does not know how to get out of the pocket when he needs to. And his arm strength is something that we've talked about ad nauseum. On top of that, the Dion train, which is why he's my QB3, and the circus that comes into town when Sanders becomes your number one quarterback. But I do think he's a quality prospect and could be a good NFL quarterback if he succeeds, which there's a decent chance he does.
See, I came from a little bit of a different angle. So mine is Jackson Dart. I have him 31 on my big board, and I would feel okay in the middle of the first round, but I'd feel more comfortable in that 20 range. And Pittsburgh just happens to land in that 20 range. They're at 21 in the draft. And I was looking in the back half of the draft, and I genuinely can't pick out a single team that needs a quarterback beyond Pittsburgh. But if you go up to the top,
Los Angeles.
Herbert's okay.
No, not the Chargers, the Rams.
Oh, I think Stafford has a good 2 more years in him, and I don't think that they're going to want to draft a quarterback at a premium position when they have Stetson Bennett still. So, yes,
Stetson
Aaron,
Bennett. Okay,
he's a backup. I get it, but a premium draft pick when you already have a quarterback like Matthew Stafford. They're trying to chase for the championship before everyone kind of just is on their way out. So that I just, in terms of building a team, I don't think that's necessary right now. But guys, even in the front half, the only few teams that need a quarterback, Tennessee, Cleveland, New York, you could argue the Jets, and then the Saints are really the only ones. And even a stretch is Indy. I think the more likely scenario, rather than Pittsburgh, is one of the top 3 teams in Tennessee, Cleveland, and New York Giants trade back up into the mid to late first round for Jackson Dart, possibly hopping Pittsburgh, possibly hopping the Rams, if they are so confident that one of those 2 teams is going to take a quarterback.
I feel like if there's a team to do that, it would be the Giants. Because the Giants, and I actually wouldn't hate that because that would give him weapons, right? You have a decent defense and a defensive line who is surging. You have Malik Neighbors and whoever you take there in that first round. Ideally for them, it'd be Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter. But then you get Jackson Dart to sit behind the combo of Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. Are they the best mentors? No. Are they quarterbacks you want to learn from? Probably not. But is it somebody to sit behind for a season while you develop, which Dart's going to need time to do? Yeah, I think so. I don't hate that, Ryan.
Yeah, because I would love to answer none of these guys. But I have to pick one, and so I picked Sanders. He's my QB2. Just think he can be that average starter in the NFL and has a higher percentage chance of that than Jackson Dart, than Jalen Milroe, than Tyler Shuck. And so, like, I was kind of trying to see how Pittsburgh might work, and I was like, okay, he can throw. He's good at throwing these deep moon ball kind of things. He doesn't rip, seam balls deep out, stuff like that, because he doesn't have the arm strength for it. But he has decent. If you let him put touch on a deep ball, it's like, okay, he can do that and has some decent accuracy in that specific part of the field. They have a solid offensive line with Fautanu hopefully coming back. Zach Frazier was a revelation at center for them, and then a really good defense. So you don't have to put up a ton of points. But by comfortable, I wrote down that I was going to be a 4 or 5 out of 10 with this, which I think just kind of speaks to we're not comfortable with any of these guys. We don't really want to take any of them in the first round.
Cam Ward is so valuable. That's why getting the number one quarterback is such a boon.
If you really want to get your money's worth, build the rest of the team this year. Get your quarterback next year.
Oh, my gosh.
That's true. And then you take Trey Lance at number 5 spot, or number 3. Is that when the Niners did it?
Yeah, that's exactly what they did.
Nice. But then you draft Brock Purdy in the 7th round, and you end up being okay.
It's the conversation of, do you build the team first or get the quarterback first? And I think the argument is you do what's best for your team. And I think what's best for the Titans is to run and punt Will Levis to the moon.
But I will say there is no set way to do it, because honestly, we talk about the Eagles a lot. The Eagles had a very good roster and drafted Jalen Hurts in the 2nd round. And it's not as simple as that, because they then did have to wind a little bit in Hurts' time as a starter. He wasn't immediately amazing. But they had a really good roster. They set a quarterback that did need to develop a little bit in it, didn't put a ton of pressure on him at first, and he ended up being a guy that can lead you to a Super Bowl. So there's not one, there's more than one way to skin a cat, for sure. Let's talk wide receivers. Are we ready to move on to probably the second most fun position in terms of draft talk?
Let's do it.
So we're going to start off with Teteroa McMillan, who ended up being one of the more controversial prospects overall in this draft class. And that held pretty true for us. He fell 2 spots in this big board from 12 to 14. I am the highest on him by a good margin. I'm at 7. And then Ryan, I know you had him at 20, and then Aaron, he was 17 for you, I believe. Yeah. So it's not that he's fallen out of the first round for any of us, but there is a pretty substantial gap for him, where I have him 10 spots to Aaron, 13 for Ryan. So I wanted to start out, if you guys listened to our first big board episode, we did prospect court, which is where one person would be for a prospect, one person would be against. You would present arguments and go from there. So we're going to do a pseudo prospect court here for T-Mac, because he's been so controversial. There's been a lot of takes flying around him. So obviously I will be on his side. Ryan and Aaron will be against me. Ryan, I will start with you now for this one. What is holding you back from putting T-Mac as a top 10 player?
I think the biggest thing is I didn't love the fact that he didn't test. I would have loved some measurables out of him. But film-wise, the inability to take the top off of a defense was a huge minus, and that's not something I'm looking for out of a X receiver. But big body, physical receiver, he's still going to be a first-round pick. The only other thing I could knock him for, and again, we did wide receivers back in February.
It feels forever ago, dude. Finding my notes for this board was nuts.
Not a smooth route runner, and he kind of takes like small strides, which is odd for a big guy. I would like him to see open up the stride, get down the field a little bit faster. But even like getting in and out of breaks, he cuts corners because he's so big sometimes, which is not something you want to see. All things that you can fix, all things that are coachable, fixable, teachable. But again, I think I actually had him at like 21 or 22. So he moved up to 20 on mine. But consensus-wise, I think he did drop a little bit. I think there is just a little bit of smoke with him. No one really knows where he would be best fit. Some people are like, oh, he can be on the Panthers. Some people are like, oh, he can be the Cowboys. Others are like, let him slide all the way down to like 20. I genuinely don't know where he would be best fit, which is concerning as well. But it's just a matter of what do you want and how do you want to build your team?
You're right. I've seen him as high as 8 to the Panthers, and then in Daniel Jeremiah's latest mock, as low as 22 to the Chargers. And so I think that speaks to not only how controversial he's been from us in our rankings, but in the scouting community in general. There is just very little consensus. From big board wise, for Nate Tice, he's at 3. And again, for Daniel Jeremiah, he's in the 20s. And so this is just not a guy that people are really stuck on. Aaron, what holds you back from having him as that top 10 guy?
Similar to what Ryan said, I think lack of top end speed is brutal. The inability you want your number one receiver to feel like he can beat anybody at any moment. And with Tet, I do think that he is a fantastic receiver, and I think he's going to be a very good receiver in this league. But I wonder, like, does he have the straight up speed, like foot speed, to be that number one receiver who can beat anybody on any given play? People like to compare him. Go ahead.
I was going to say, by the way, I don't know if anyone saw it because pro day stuff is so hard to find, but apparently he ran between a 4.46 and a 4.54.
I heard that.
On his RAS card, it had as a 4.53, so that's what I went off of.
Yeah. I appreciate that being on the lower end. It definitely is more accurate. No, I think there's been prospect fatigue with Tet to his detriment. I just feel like we've been talking about T-Mac. Sorry, he likes to go back T-Mac and not Tet, which I didn't know until I heard that the other day. But I think there's prospect fatigue with T-Mac because we've been talking about him since this process started back in like September, October, right? He has been mocked to every team under the sun, and we started mocking him as high as, 3 or 4 to the Patriots? Like, it's been an absurd cycle for him, and it's been kind of crazy to watch the change that he's gone through in how the public, or not the public, but the mock draft media feels about this guy. For me, the 4.53 helps, but it doesn't do much other than confirm my priors. There's just something missing. To the same way that this quarterback class feels off and Ryan doesn't feel comfortable taking Cam, he'd rather take Abdul. I'm like, yeah, there's so many better players that I would rather take. There's a reason he ended up at 14 behind multiple edge rushers, multiple tackles, and a random tight end.
So when it comes to liking Ted, again, I have him at 7, think he is solidly in that top 10. The biggest knock that I've seen against him online is that he can't separate. And at this point,
that's
if you
TikTok,
say that,
dude,
I just flat out disagree. He just separates from people. And
there's
from
different
corners.
ways to separate. You can separate without your fancy routes and your beautiful first steps like your Matthew Golden. He separates by being longer and taller and stronger than you.
And even he just creates yardage of separation against man coverage, against press coverage all the time. And so if you say that, I'm assuming you're just being lazy. You saw a guy who was 6'5", 215, and you're like, he probably can't get open. He checks all the boxes for me. I almost said so many boxes. He checks all the boxes. Very good after the catch. He's physical. We already talked about how he has 29 missed tackles for us this year, number 2 in the class behind Luther Burden, who gets credit for having an amazing yak ability.
He does.
But no one ever talks about it when it comes to Tet. Again, I think they just typecast him and go, oh, he's 6'5", 215. He's a jump ball guy. No, dude, he averages 5.1 yards after the catch per reception. He's really strong hands, both in contested catches and then also just plucking the ball on the move. He is a hands catcher all day, doesn't let it get into his body. Really good contested catch ability just in general. He's a volleyball player. He's got a solid vert. And then, Aaron, you talked about the catch radius is amazing. He is able to extend at all times. So not only is he tall, not only can he jump, but he also is great at high pointing the ball, which is so important when it comes to that. I'm glad you guys brought up speed because I just think 4.53 is enough. I looked up some of the guys that I thought were decent comps for him. So T. Higgins ran a 4.54, and Tet's splits, the 10 and 20 yard split, were insanely better than T's. DeAndre Hopkins ran a 4.57. Mike Evans ran a 4.53. These are guys that are really good receivers at that 4-5 level. So I don't think that kills him. And even when it comes to the numbers, just put up really good production with a horrible offense. Arizona's offense was putrid. It was only him.
Yeah, that's something I was going to bring up is how the routes that they asked him to run at Arizona and the passes that he are on his tape, like the ones where he catches the football, it's just bland, right? And I think that hurts him, and that is one of the reasons he's fallen. And I think it's a case of true ball knower. We have Tet at 12, which is kind of do we have 14, which is kind of middle of the pack when it comes to consensus. So I feel good about it, but I think he's going to succeed. I definitely think he's a top 15 receiver. I would take him probably at 9 if I'm the Panthers.
Which I'm glad you brought us there, because we were going to talk Matthew Golden and how he moved up 2 spots. We're just going to go past that because we've talked about Golden a lot in a couple different episodes. But those are, at least consensus-wise, the top 2 receivers in this class. There's a little bit, some people would go throw Burden there, some people Ibuka, but it seems like the consensus has Golden and Tet. If both are there for the Panthers, and we're going to go down for a couple teams here, but the Panthers at 8, do you take either of them? And if so, who, Ryan?
Panthers, no. I think we've talked about countless times the Panthers defense just needs an overhaul. If I'm the Panthers, I would love the combination of Will Johnson, Jalen Walker, or even an edge rusher like Michael Williams or someone along those lines. Someone that can perform at a high level and just overhaul the defense.
I'm with you, Ryan. I saw somebody on Twitter make the point that, hey, you should take Tet or whoever you have as your number 1 receiver because you want to see if Bryce Young has it this year, and you're not going to fix the defense with one player. And while I don't think you fix the defense with one player, you do have to start somewhere. Like, you do have to get good defensive players to fix your defense. And so while I understand wanting to give your quarterback as much, as many weapons as possible, give him as good a situation as possible, dude, also defense is a good situation, right? If you don't have to put up 35 points every game, that puts a lot less pressure on your quarterback. So totally agree where I would take edge rusher, another corner, Walker if you're sold on him being that tweener build.
I agree defense is for the Panthers, but I think if they're going to take a receiver, it should be Golden, because I think Golden helps out Bryce Young more than Tet does, because if you have to give Xavier Legette at least another year, and I think Legette does different things than Golden, similar to Tet, in that he has a crazy catch radius, he's a freaky athlete, and he's a deep ball guy. Golden is that shifty, take the top off the defense, crazy speed guy. So if I'm the Panthers and I want a receiver, I want Golden, and I think taking Golden there's a little too rich for my blood. Therefore, defense.
Now, same question for the Dallas Cowboys. They have pick 12,
T-Mac.
So we're moving back a little bit. Aaron, there you go.
T-Mac. Pairing T-Mac with CeeDee Lamb, moving CeeDee Lamb into the slot feels perfect. I hate it as an Eagles fan, and that's how you know it's a good move for an organization if the opponent fans either love it or hate it. The Eagles got Saquon. Everyone was freaking out. And they were like, why did we let this happen? That's how you know it's a good move. If the Cowboys get T-Mac, fantastic move for the Cowboys, and I would hate it as a Birds fan. Moving CD into the slot, letting Tet be your number 1 on the outside. CD's still going to be your number 1 by volume, but now you have a number 1 X receiver on the outside who can be Tetero and McMillan, just absolutely insane on those deep crossers, and just play a complementary game to one of the best wide receivers in the league. Really help out this offense, really give it more room to grow and more room to breathe instead of just CD all game, which hurts him in fantasy, but oh well, it's way better for the team.
I'm not really sure. I'm a little split. I could even throw Luther Burden in there in Dallas, but again, it's all preference. I would like to see how the board fell specifically for Dallas, because obviously we talked about the running back issues.
Let me help with that. Consensus right now has the mock draft, according to NFL Mock Draft Database, at 12, T-Mac is the most popular selection with 31%, which is higher than most selections of this nature. Jalen Walker, edge, Georgia, 8 to the Panthers is very popular.
Yeah,
so
I'm assuming that's Dallas fans flooding the votes too.
Well, no, this is
saying we need offense.
This is based on media, right? The way that
Okay.
these mock drafts are compiled is it takes like CBS, NFL Network, our stuff, and it compiles it into a database. And this is the most popular selection in the database. Is at 12.
If it wasn't T-Mac, I could even argue maybe even offensive line again. I know Dallas probably doesn't want to hear that, but
Or running back.
yeah.
But Zach Martin just retired, so
Yeah.
they do have some spots they need to take care of. Their last team, when we talked to this, is Seattle at 18.
I don't really know how Seattle's going to shape out with Sam Darnold.
And might I add, with two receivers who play the exact same game.
Yeah.
Right, so do you want to get a third?
Do you think T-Mac plays a similar game to Cooper and JSN?
Not even close.
Exactly. If he's there at Seattle's pick at, 19? 18. Snatch him up in a second. If he's there at 15 and the Falcons are like hesitating, you trade up. If he's there at 14, you trade up. Like Seattle, if there's a chance for them to get Tet McMillan, you make a move and you get him. He's that kind of player. He's that kind of prospect.
I don't know. If I'm Seattle, the three guys I'm looking at, A, would be almost any offensive lineman.
Yes.
B, I could even throw in Campbell right before Tampa. I think that's a prime spot if Campbell is to go off the board.
Giad Campbell, linebacker
Okay.
from Alabama.
Or Tet would be the big three. I agree.
I think the only way you take offense if you're Seattle is if it's T-Mac, right? If he's not there, you don't take a receiver, you don't take a tight end, you take an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman, but that's it.
Yep, I think I agree because I think at that point, if he falls that far, it's just he is so good as a prospect. Like we'll figure out guard later,
Right? Exactly.
But we just have to get that value here. Moving on to our number 1 and number 2 players, I'm sure if you guys have been listening to draft content, you have gotten plenty of Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter. They are our number 1 and number 2 player, Hunter at 1, Carter at 2. By the thinnest of margins, me and Aaron had Travis at 1, Ryan had Abdul Carter, so it ended up being 1.333 to 1.6666. So we already know that these are going to be players we like, players we think are good, but I thought it would be fun to give a percentage for their careers. So what is the percentage that they end up as all pros, above average starters, or a bust? You can't play them. You can't put them on your field. They washed out of the league. So we're going to start with Travis Hunter. For me, the percentage I have him at an all pro, and this is if he plays one position, and this is for either corner or receiver, depending on which team he goes to. I'm sorry, we have all the qualifiers, but we haven't seen a player like this ever. And so
Yeah.
a little bit unique, but I would say that all pro for him, I am so sold. I'm like 40%. I think he is such a good player.
That high?
Dude, his instincts, the way that he is going to improve when he plays one position.
Yikes.
Guys, he didn't even go to offensive meetings at Colorado. He didn't go to a single offensive meeting. He just played receiver and won the Biletnikoff. He had 95 catches. I think it was 1,300 something yards.
Yeah.
Double-digit touchdowns. He basically didn't practice offense. Like, the type of talent that you have to have for that is crazy. And then we get to corner. I mean, just the way he breaks on the ball, the instincts he has. He baits quarterbacks better than I have seen anyone do ever. So I am so sold. I have like 35, 40%. We're going to land on 40 for the all-pro.
What's your perfect scenario for him? Say he goes somewhere in the top 5.
Ugh.
And so give me a team and give me a percentage offense defense. How much is he playing on either side of the ball?
Yeah, we'll just go through the top 5 minus the Titans because I am just pretty sure they're going to take Cam Ward. So Titans off the board. We get to Cleveland. If he goes to Cleveland, they are a quarterback wasteland right now. And so I think you probably just put him at corner and then something like 95% corner, 5% package on offense. When we go to number 3 with the Giants, that's where I think it gets fun because I think they could pick either and be fine at both spots. So I really don't know there. You would have to choose one again in my eyes. It would be fun for Jameis just slinging the ball with Hunter and with Neighbors. I think that would just be fun, but is that the best spot for him? I don't know. Number 4, if he goes to the New England Patriots, I think he plays receiver, 95% receiver, and maybe you can finagle something for him at corner, but that one's going to be a little more tough. Drake May just needs weapons. And then finally rounding out with Jacksonville, that's one where I also think he could play both. Because while Brian Thomas Jr. is really good, they just got rid of Christian Kirk. Travis Hunter is a lot different than Brian Thomas Jr. as a player at the receiver position, but they also had a really bad pass defense. So that's another one where I'm not really sure where he would fit in, and you could go either way.
I think so. I want to talk about my 3 most interesting scenarios for him, and that is New York, New England, and New Jacksonville. It's not New Jacksonville; just there were a lot of news there. So New York, I think if he gets drafted by the Giants, that is very good for them. Now you have Hunter and Neighbors, and you put them on the field together. I think that New York, he plays 60 offense, 40 defense, because they're going to want to let him do their own thing. I think that franchise is in enough of a wasteland and enough of like a limbo where they're going to let him get away with a lot, and whatever he wants to do, they will say yes, and he's going to want to play 50-50. All offense, all defense, right? New England, I think he's going to play 80% offense every single offensive snap. And then he's going to get in on some like third downs, on some Hail Marys, on whatever he wants to, and play corner alongside Christian Gonzalez, because that is a now number 1 receiver and a number 2 corner in the same player. He has instantly become the most valuable player in the NFL, which is why I have him at like 35% All-Pro. And then if he goes to Jacksonville, I think it's a similar thing, but maybe 50-50, a similar thing to New York where they're going to let him get away with what he wants. New head coach, new organization, kind of like their new GM. If Hunter goes to Jacksonville, he's going to be, I think, 100% on both sides of the ball.
I think I'm the only one here with realistic numbers. I have All Pro for Hunter at 8% and Carter at 12%.
Then why do you have him so high on your board?
I was saying he's the number 1 and number 2 player.
Because we're talking All Pro, not even Pro Bowl. Pro Bowl would probably be in the 30s or 40s, like you're saying.
Pro Bowl's like Pro Bowl. I have a 50-50.
We're talking the best player in the entire NFL.
Well, isn't there a first and second team All Pro? I might be making that up, but
there's first
and
then
then
second
there's
team
multiple
All-Pro.
for each position. So that basically you're saying that they're a top 5 to 7 player.
Top 4-ish corner, top like 4 to 6 corner, and top 6 to 8 receiver is what we're asking for. And I think he easily gets to one or the other.
Not even remotely.
Really? So why do you have him so high? Why do you have him at 2? If you think he's not going to make it All Pro?
No, that's not what I'm saying, Aaron. I'm saying you two just have unrealistic numbers.
You said there's an 8% chance he makes an All Pro in his career.
Yes, I think that's well above average. I mean, dude, we're talking 300 players in this class are going to get drafted.
Yes.
And you're saying
Travis Hunter is the best of all of them.
Is going to be a top 4 corner or wide receiver and beat out everyone that is currently in the league?
Yes.
Surtain, heck, I can't even throw Gardner in there anymore. But there's so many good corners, and you're saying that he's better than all of them.
Well, he doesn't have to be better right now.
He's going to be better. He's going to be better. I trust him to develop. I trust him to work hard. I trust him to stay on the football field. And I trust him to be a football player. Whether that's on offense or on defense or on both, I trust Travis Hunter to be one of the best players in this class. That's why I have him at number 1. He is unlike anybody we've ever seen sans Shohei Ohtani. If you don't have that high of a percentage, don't have him at 1. Don't have him at 2.
Well, it doesn't have to be 40, but I just feel like 8's low.
8% chance is where I have freaking like Michael Williams.
I wouldn't even have put Joe Burrow above like 12.
If you can't look at these players and have hope that they can be the best.
I have hope. I have 8% hope.
That's not hope. That's the bare minimum.
That is just a bad bet. It is taking a bet and saying that Travis Hunter is going to be a 40% chance he's an All-Pro. I would take that other 60% and run with it.
Well, yeah, because it's way more likely just from a pure percentage standpoint that he would not make an All-Pro because so many more players don't make All-Pros.
All right, well, to put it into perspective, I'll give you my numbers. Travis Hunter, All-Pro, 8%. Above average, I put it 35. I think he's above average. So you think
the percentage that he's going to be a good player is 42% or 43%?
Yes.
You think that it's 50-50 whether he becomes a starter in the
It's
NFL?
a coin flip.
Yeah,
I think
all
he
of
starts
them
day
are.
one.
Dude, there's a long track record of prospects in the first round just not panning out. You cannot say that Travis Hunter will be at 40%. Injuries could happen.
Well, I can't say
He's
that for
still
sure, but that's like the whole point of projecting.
He's still at a really concerning weight. His legs are so skinny they could snap in an instant. CJ Gardner-Johnson probably would break them like a twig.
CJ Gardner-Johnson likes to fight people. I don't
I
trust
know.
his hitting.
So just be a little bit more cautious with your numbers. Is all
I have
I'm
him
saying.
at 1 overall. Travis Hunter is exempt from the rest of this class. You're right. Draft
Okay,
picks.
well, let me get to my bust potential. 28% average. So that's, I think, very standard for a first-round pick. And then bust, I have it 29%.
You think there is a higher chance that he is a bust than there is
an average
player?
Yes.
So I guess I'm confused how you would rank like
Anyone else?
Yeah.
That's just
Why would
how
you
it
draft
works
if your
on the
percentages
graph.
if your percentages are this low? Why would you draft ever? The point of this is we are projecting, right?
Yes. What do you mean? Why would I draft ever? Everyone
there is a
else
20
below
if
these
there
two
is-
guys are going to have lower rankings in above average, average, and bust.
I'm blown away that you have like. I don't get it. I don't get it. What's your percentages for Abdul Carter? We can't stick on Hunter forever.
All right. Carter, 12% all pro, 40% above average, 25% average, and then 23% bust.
1 in 4 chance that Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter bust.
No. Well, yes.
Yeah,
But
that's what you just
yes,
said.
yes, that is what I'm saying. But I want to just put it into perspective that it is not a guarantee, and especially all pro is you're fighting against the top dogs. So we're saying Abdul
Right,
Carter
but
at
you
some
take the
point
top
in his
dogs at
career
1.
is going to be better than Myles Garrett, Max Crosby.
Myles Garrett's old. Max Crosby's old. They're going
I
to be
know,
out of the
but
league by
there's
the time
going to
Abdul
be a
Carter hits his
constant
prime.
cycle.
We're projecting an
youth.
entire career of Abdul Carter. And you're saying that there is what, a 12% chance in his entire career he makes an all-pro?
That is good odds. Are you kidding me?
So you're saying if you
The Sixers have a 10% chance to get the number 1 overall draft pick. You're saying that's
$1
bad?
in the jar.
That's $1. That's $1.
No, you're saying that's bad?
Those
No,
are great
that's
odds for
good.
having the Sixers.
So
Sixers
why is
sucks.
All right, guys.
8% or 12% bad?
Because you're
isn't
saying
the-
if you simmed Abdul Carter's career 100 times, he only makes the All-Pro team 12 of those 100. And I am saying, if that is the case, if that is true, he is not deserving of the number 1 or number 2 overall selection. If you sim someone's career, their NFL lifespan 100 times, and they only make All-Pro 12, or in Hunter's case, 8 times, they are not worthy of a first-round pick, much less number 1 or number 2.
And me even having 35 or 50 or 40% on Travis Hunter, like that doesn't mean that he is for sure going to be an all-pro. Again, there's still at that point at least 60% chance that he is an above average starter, an average starter, or a bust. But man, if I'm taking a guy at 1 or at 2, especially at the corner and receiver position, which hasn't gone that high in forever, I need them to be that special kind of player, and I think he could be. I think we probably spent enough time on that. I did not expect that to be that crazy.
He did?
Yeah, which is what's fun about doing this and not on everything communicating beforehand. So moving on to the next question. After that argument, there obviously we have a top 32 in a big board of a top 100. Duh. So those top 32, it doesn't exactly work out like this, obviously, but are the guys that you would think, quote unquote, would go in the first round. So right now, I want to get to some slight sleepers, not completely, because they're guys that we think could sneak into the first round, but guys who didn't get buzz for us in terms of making it in that top 32, but could slip in that back end to teams like the Chiefs, the Eagles, the Bills, the Ravens from that 28 to 32 spot. Ryan, who's your guy that you look at as outside our top 32 consensus, working his way into the first round?
A drunken first rounder, if you will.
Okay, I found what I was looking for. So recently there was a ESPN Plus article. Aaron Schatz wrote it yesterday, and he actually did the bust elite upper tier above average starter for quarterbacks. So to put it in perspective, Cam Ward was 16.1% elite. So you're right. I might be a little bit lower than consensus, but bust, he has it 38%.
But we've talked about the whole time that Cam Ward's a volatile prospect.
He's a quarterback. Yeah. We weren't talking about
Shedeur
Cam
Sanders,
Ward.
bust, 43%. Elite, 12%.
We
Jackson
agree.
Dart, bust, 44%. Elite, 11%. Shuck, bust, 78%. Elite, 1.7%.
He's 26, of course.
I know.
We weren't talking about quarterbacks.
I know, but I'm just saying, I feel like I'm closer to the not consensus, but where you really should be for these numbers.
If Cam Ward is your 16th best prospect and he's 16% elite, then the number one prospect should probably be somewhere in the 25, 30%. Like,
that's what you would hope, obviously, but
that's not what you said.
I'm at 8%.
Because I think that's unrealistic.
If you look at so I see what you're saying. If you look at all time, like if you went through every single number one pick for a draft and went and parsed it out and said his career was elite, his career was a bust, like blah 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 blah. On it, like I don't know what the percentages would be, but it probably would be somewhere close to 10%. But when you're projecting a guy just as a prospect, you should have in your mind, if he's going to be taken number one overall, really just top 5, you should be like, this is a guy that I want to be an all-pro because I am taking him with a top 5 pick. So that's where I think the disconnect is, where your math is probably right when you just look at the past 25 years of drafting. But before the draft, this guy's potential needs to be in that range, or like you should just trade your pick every year for a guy that's already established, because the percentages are so low that he would be in that top tier. I'm trying to think of, like you said, Pat Surtain or like JC Horn. So like whoever has the number 2 pick this year that's going to take Hunter, if he's a corner, if you want to make him a corner, you should just trade that pick for Horn. But no one ever does that because they think of that potential, of that all-pro potential, and then obviously the contracts come in and blah, 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 blah. But I think that's the disconnect.
I mean, I know it's quarterbacks, but you're going to be getting similar numbers.
In a quarterback class that has some of the worst quarterbacks we've seen in a long time, and we had an argument about Cam Ward not going number 1 overall because you don't like him and because you'd rather not take Cam Ward here. That's the argument you're using against Travis Hunter?
I mean, it's the only stats I can use against you right now that like are readily available.
I don't understand the point of drafting if you're not projecting these guys to be all-pro level players. At least the guys in the top 4.
Aaron, everyone would love to think in their mind and live in a fantasy where they're all pros. But that's not reality. Only 2 quarterbacks get picked. Only 2 tight ends get picked. That means it's Brock Bowers, Travis Kelce / George Kittle / Mark Andrews. Or Sam Laporta for the rest of eternity.
But again, that is what
you want.
Brock Bowers was a top 5 prospect in last year's draft. That's the point.
Yes, and Hunter is a better prospect than Bowers was.
Yes, and you're betting on that all-pro potential, but you never know.
Which is why he's at 35% for me.
Is astronomically high.
4 out of it.
You just pulled up stats that say it's not. Cam Ward is at 16%.
16, yes.
He is our 11th player.
He's volatile.
He's ESPN 7.
Right. And so, again, you parse that out into the number 1 player, like that should be more.
Yes, 35%. Right. It should be more, but I feel like just in the big picture, I feel like I'm closer to that number than you two.
35% is the number I gave. Tyler gave 40.
They also used elite. They didn't use all pro.
Well, what would you say elite is? Because I would say if you're an elite player, you're going to make an all-pro team at some point. during your
Elite, I
career.
would say, is top 8.
Great.
Yeah, and so you're going to have a breakout
bare
season,
minimum one
and
all-pro.
at some
Okay,
point, you'll
and
make an
all
all-pro
pro
team.
is top 2 for
All-pro is-
quarterbacks.
We're not talking
We're
about
not talking about
Ryan.
quarterbacks.
Okay, still. All right, let's use Carter. You still got to be top 4.
Yes, and he will
So
be.
cut
That's
that
what we're
percentage in
saying.
half.
So we're projecting he will. Like that, again, because we like him a lot. He's your number one player.
Okay, so, but what I'm saying is, let's take that elite number. Let's translate that Cam Ward 16.7% or 16.1% and translate it to edge, theoretically. All right, let's say he's elite is top 8 still. I think that's a fair argument. You could even argue top 10. We put it at 35. Half of those players make all pro.
In 1 year.
That's
he's going to have
17%.
We think he'll have a 12-year career if we think he's going to be elite. He
Right.
has to make one all-pro team in 10 to 12 years. If he's a top 10, even if honestly, if he's a top 15 edge and is in like the NFL for that stretch of time, he probably at one point would make an all-pro team with a breakout year.
That's a gamble. And
Yes!
that's the whole
That's
point
what
of this. But
drafting is.
I know, but Aaron,
Again, but this is
entire
where it
point I
comes
was
to
getting
what-
at is I feel like your numbers are so far off of where they should be because we're talking about all pro here, not just Pro Bowl.
We're talking about the number one prospect in this class, who I would argue would be the number one prospect in last year's and the years before, because he is something we have never seen before. Yeah, I'm going to say out of 100 Sims, 35 he makes all pro in the first 5 years.
Marcus Russell was someone no one ever saw before.
Oh my God. Jamarcus Russell went to the Raiders, to a really, really bad organization, had no work ethic, was a quarterback. We're talking, Travis Hunter is not going to bust within the first 2 years.
And also, like,
Barring injury.
Jamarcus Russell, like CJ Stroud, we can just name picks that either hit or missed all day. That's not what we're talking about. It's just the percentage chance.
You know how we know this argument's over is because Ryan has his head in his hands. We can move on.
Well, we have to because we can't keep spending time on this.
It is a mute point at this point.
Moot point.
A moot?
Moot.
Is it spelled differently?
MOOT, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Hey, look at that. We agreed on something. We're making progress.
So
I didn't agree. I just said okay. I was like, if you think you're right, that fine with me. I'm not going to look it up. I believe you.
The moot point? So you agreed.
So this
I
is
feel
a
like
moot
I've heard them
point.
synonymously, though.
We have specifically how many? We have 68 guys that aren't in our top 32. That's math of our top 100 board.
Proud of you, bud.
Ryan, which of those 68 players that are not in our top 32 could you see sneaking into the first round?
So this took me a hot minute because when I think of sneaking into the first round, I'm thinking back ends. At no point do I think any of these guys go top 16. But there are a few edge players specifically. I think Ezraku or Umami Ellen could sneak in because there are a few teams at the back end, Commanders, Lions, Eagles, all need an edge player. Could I absolutely see that. I think Dart and Milrow are the two that just have the most smoke and could absolutely sneak in. People want to trade up. They want that fifth-year option. Always possible with quarterbacks. I think the easy answers, Shadur Sanders, because he was outside the top 32.
I probably should have tagged it as non-quarterback because we know how the quarterback inflated values go. So let's keep it to just non-quarterbacks.
Yeah. I think Jalen Royals deserves it. Don't know if it happens, but my firm answer is probably Ezraku or Umami Ellen.
Those are the two names that I had. Like, there's a list of like 4 or 5 guys. If you look at how he broke it down, there's like a group of tier 5 has 4 guys in the 31 to 34 range. I think are all first round prospects. And then there's a group of like Ezraku, Umami Ellen, Harmon. on the defensive line, and then Jaden Higgins, Henderson, and I think it kind of falls off that Connerly would be the other one, where those guys I think are all easily could go in the first round, and I don't think any of the three of us would bat an eye.
The two for me are the two Oregon guys you mentioned, and that's Derek Harmon, defensive tackle from Oregon, Josh Connerly Jr., offensive tackle from Oregon. Dude, both of those guys have just risen up the board for me. I had both
Harmon
of them in
went
the
up
20s.
15 between these last two boards. 15
Yep.
spots. That's
So
crazy.
we got Derek Harmon at 35 and then Josh Connerly Jr. at 37. So pretty close to that 32 number. And then Connerly really rose for me just because I was sitting there and somebody I was listening to on a podcast really put it well, because he's like, he just checks all of these like boxes in terms of athlete, in the right position, good hands, played really good competition, showed out against really good competition in the Big Ten championship game against Abdul Carter. The only thing is his play strength. And that's something that you can just pretty easily improve as you get older, stronger, and continue to grow as a player. So
Have a kid, get dad strength.
exactly.
It's broken.
However you can. And so I guess it just clicked for me of like, why am I so low on him when I actually like almost everything about him? And his play strength is not great. You see it in that Ohio State game, even in some of the UCLA game. But everything else is there. And the other thing obviously was the Senior Bowl clip with Mike Green. Like, I think that it's such a bad clip getting run over like that. But I had to take a step back and go, okay, this one rep in the Senior Bowl shouldn't define him as a prospect when you have all this game tape. He played a ton of seasons at Oregon, former 5-star. So I think for me, then one player I would pick out from that would be Connerly, sneaking his way into maybe the Chiefs at 31. We talked about how much they need to tackle. I think he could be the pick there for them.
I like the Oregon guys as like sneaky first rounders. Harmon, I've really grown to love him and Nolan as two of my favorite players in this class, as just interior guys who can F some mess up, and they're just nasty little dudes. I love it. Big dudes, I guess they're big. They're nasty big dudes. That's more appropriate.
Bigger guys for sure. As with any big board, and Ryan got into it at the beginning of the show, it is difficult to rank this many guys, and especially when there are some really unique prospects in this class, like a Travis Hunter, Jalen Walker, and those might be the guys for you. But Ryan, who was the most difficult player for you to find a slot for?
See, we're talking about picking one player being the most difficult. I had 4 because there are so many that were difficult.
There's 100 guys. I'd hope you have more than 4.
Yeah, and there's definitely probably going to be some overlap here. I think the highest on my big board that I found difficult to rank was Shamar Stewart. We talked about the athletic ability, the lack of production. It's a big question mark because we didn't really get to see much production in A&M's system along with Scorton and Turner. So that was almost tantalizing. Luther Burden was another one. I think people have all the question marks.
He's fallen.
You had a down year after one great year. What's going to happen there? I think he will be fine, but I found that a little difficult to rank. Tyler Booker, after the combine, one of the most atrocious combines we've seen in recent history. Tyler Hill says, "Don't worry about it. That's not what he's going to be asked to do. He thinks he can still get out in space. He can block well." But actually, another O lineman I had, and this is my last one, Anthony Belton, and I am really excited to see where he goes because I have him low on my board, and I think the overall consensus on our big board. But I think he could be a real sleeper in this draft class because he has the raw physical abilities. It's just the technique. It's the same thing with Stewart. How do you perform at your position at a high level can all be fixed with coaching. But just because of the sheer athletic ability of Anthony Belton, I think he cracks this big board.
Aaron, who was hard for you, and even if you do have some overlap?
I don't have much actually. So Ryan had a lot of good guys, but I didn't have a lot of overlap when it came to ranking. I didn't have an issue with Shamar Stewart. I just kept saying, "Is this guy better? Do I trust this guy a little bit more?" And I kept saying yes, and so that's why he slid back to 12 for me. A guy I struggled with was Josh Simmons because of that, what was it, ACL injury?
Patella tendon.
Okay. apologies, wrong knee thing. That's a knee, right? Patella tendon.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, okay. He was a guy I struggled with, and he is at 16 for me, solidly in my tackle 3 behind Campbell and Membu. If they end up being tackles, I think at least 2 of those 3 are going to end up as tackles. But Simmons is a good player, and I think he's a guy that could just if he gets healthy, he could be a really solid left-right tackle for the next 10, 15 years in this league. The question is, and I think he would be tackle 1 if he was healthy, at least for me, is he going to be healthy? And that's the unknown. And so you're taking a risk here, thus the 16. Another injury risk that I struggled to rank, but I ended up way higher on him than I expected to be, was Kevin Winston Jr. out of Penn State, the safety, who I love his tape. I love what he's able to do. I love his athleticism. I love the way he measured out. Tyler, we talked about it before the show, how he ran a 40 at his most recent pro day, and his ACL is looking good. I have him at 57. I'm excited to see what he is, and he feels like the perfect second-round safety that is just going to end up as a starter and an above-average one for the next 15 years. 8 to 10 years.
Oh, man, where do I start with players that were hard to rank? I wrote down 6. I probably won't do all of them because what's funny is there's actually not all the I have none of them overlapping with what you guys have. We'll start with Nick Emanwari because, man, is the athleticism crazy. And it's not that it never shows up on tape. It's not one of those clean-cut guys where you can just go, oh, he's a combine warrior. Because there are times where, especially his jumping ability, he's able to make some really insane plays on the ball, especially you think about the LSU pick he had.
But it shows up less than you'd like.
Yeah, it's just not always there. Mentally, he's just not super quick, especially in the run game. And so that's where it was just really hard for me, and I ended up being pretty low on him compared to consensus, about where we were all pretty much in the same area on him. But overall, I ended up being low just because of that. Kenneth Grant for me was another one where, talk about inconsistencies, just a lot of them, especially even in the run game where this is supposed to be his thing. Like, there was just times where I saw him get uprooted by double teams. And man, if you're going to give me pretty much no pass rushing juice, B340, and this is supposed to be your calling card, that's so tough for me. And so I ended up having him behind Tyleik Williams. We talked about that in our defensive line episode. James Pierce Jr. from the start has been unreal in terms of where I've moved him to. I've had him, I think, as high as 16 or 15, and then now he ended up being outside of my top 30 because he's just a skinny guy who has a lot of speed, is not very explosive, and kind of works like a power rusher more than anything. He just tries to get on top of guys, and he's really good in hand placement. But if you're going to be 240, I can't be relying on you to be a power rusher. Like, that's just not going to work. And then you're not getting anything in the run game. Mike Green, I ended up being pretty high on him, but man, it just goes against a lot of stuff I like in players. He is a small guy from a small school. And so it's like, typically, if you just told me that, I'd be like, I'm probably lower than consensus on him. But the Ohio State performance, the Senior Bowl performance, and I think he can just be violent enough and have a high enough motor to make up for some of the size stuff. Jalen Walker, we've talked about it a lot, but honestly, I'm sitting here, I had him at 10. I kind of want to drop him.
Walker?
Yeah, like, because when I put him at 10, I'm betting he's a coach's son, and I'm betting that he's an elite athlete that he'll figure it out. It just worries me he didn't test. Because I'm going, if you're that elite of an athlete, why would you just not test? And
injury? So avoid the Gunnar Helm situation?
Maybe, but I don't know. I just think if you're going to kill the combine, wouldn't you just want to go do the combine? When you don't test, most of the time it's because you're not going to test well. And so I wonder if what scares me is that he is even a very good athlete, but not an elite athlete while being a tweener, small for an edge, not good mentally enough for a linebacker because he can't cover right now. He doesn't diagnose plays very well. And so honestly, I think if we were to do this again, or if we were to re-rank him, I'd probably just drop him because that's stuff that really worries me. And then Mykel Williams, he's another one of these low production guys, but he had a high ankle sprain. Also, the scheme he's playing in didn't let him just pin his ears back and run at the passer a lot. So it's all stuff that you really have to factor in. So those guys, it's all defense, funnily enough, but those guys were really the hardest guys to place. Ended up being low on some and higher on some others.
But that also like demonstrates what this class is strong at, and that's edge rusher and interior defensive line. There's a lot of guys here, a lot of guys that we feel really confident in on the edge and on the interior, and that puts a team like, I don't know, maybe like the Eagles per chance, who are sitting at 32. There's a lot of guys available to them between Harmon, Nolan, Ezeraku, Uman Mielen, and if a guy falls like Williams, that's a really good spot. It's a really, really good late first, early second round like group for defensive linemen.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the Eagles because we're going to get into some team talk right now. Ryan and Aaron are Eagles fans. I'm a Bucks fan, and then Ryan also somewhat follows the Raiders. ? I never
dabble.
Yeah, I never really got the full story of that, but
You know, it's funny that you say that because my contact picture for you is you in a Raiders jersey on draft night 2 years ago.
What, a man can't wear a Raiders jersey?
I mean,
one day
What
the
makes it
story.
worse is I think it was Derek Carr's.
no, it was Devontae Adams.
Devontae Adams, yeah.
It's Devontae
Oof.
Adams. It's
Well,
right there. Oh, wait, that's your
Don't
phone
worry,
number.
the Cooper DeJean jersey's still coming in the mail.
Coming in.
It was ordered in February and still has not shipped.
Shout out Fanatics. I never order from them ever. They are horrible.
I texted Ryan that there was a discount on Phillies jerseys, and he goes, I'm never ordering from them again until they go back to normal stitch jerseys.
Yeah, it's so annoying. They
Just to
don't
print on.
stitch the nameplates anymore.
Right,
they
it's
don't.
all ironed on. But we're going to talk about the teams that we follow and their dream scenarios. So, Aaron, we're going to start with you because you were talking about it a little bit. The Eagles at 32. What is your, and when I say dream scenario, it still has to be kind of realistic, but the dream
You
of the
mean we
realistic
can't trade up
scenarios.
to number 2 overall and get Abdul Carter?
Right, not that.
He wants to be an Eagle, Tyler, and you know it.
Well, but I don't know. Is he worth trading up if there's only, a 10% chance he's going to be an all-pro? I don't know. Like,
Man. So the way I did this is I made my own rules for your prompt, and I said that there is I'm giving myself what I expect and what would be a positive outcome, a great outcome, and the best outcome possible for the Eagles, right? And I picked one player for each. So the what I expect and a great outcome for me, or a positive outcome for me, is if they take a guy like, let's say, Derek Harmon, an interior defensive lineman to loop in and replace that Milton Williams minutes, or you take a guy like Princely Umanmielen, Donovan Ezeraku. Those are my 3 guys for a positive outcome. You're getting an edge rusher to replace Josh Sweat and our interior guy to replace Milton Williams. A good outcome, like one I'd be like, oh, heck yeah, dude, let's go, is if the Eagles were to draft Walter Nolan. I am absolutely pumped. You're getting a guy who I think opposite Jalen Carter is going to terrorize. He's going to make up for every double team that goes against Carter, Nolan's going to feast on. It's a fantastic combination, and I love it very much. My favorite player that I want to see the Eagles taking, and my perfect outcome is Mykel Williams. 1, Georgia, that's hilarious. And 2, you are drafting a guy who I think could really, really be a top-tier edge rusher in the league, and you're getting him at a premium price if he's able to fall to you at 32. Mike Green also, but I have less faith in Green than I do in Williams. I actually had Williams as my edge. I think he was at my edge 2 in this most recent board. Let me just check that, make sure I'm not talking to him. But yeah, I had Williams at 10. He was a top 10 player in my edge 2, ahead of Shamar, ahead of Green. And I think that's my perfect outcome for the Eagles.
That's interesting because, I mean, that just goes to show you some Eagles fans are even split on what they think they should do. I thought safety was a little bit more of a need than defensive line. So
I have a counter for that when you're done. I have a counter.
Okay. Malachi Starks, if he makes it that far, but like even Starks was 10 on my big board and Mykel was 13 on my big board. So even that like is a luxury. Like that would be dream scenario, but highly doubt that happens. Nick Emenwari was actually in our last mock draft to the Eagles. I picked him. I think that's a very fine fit. I don't think I need to dive too deep into that, but there's a need at safety with CJGJ leaving. And then kind of a compliment to what Aaron said, the top edge player available. It would be a perfectly fine siding. Very positive, very good. The likely scenario would be a combination of probably Nick Scorin or...
he visited Philly.
Yeah.
He went on a visit to Philadelphia, so that seems likely.
Umanmielen or Ezeraku are also fine options at 32. I think that's where the value is.
So my argument is safeties have never been a very substantial piece of Vic Fangio's systems. They're not the kind of player who Fangio needs a top tier safety for his system to work. What he needs is really talented corners and really talented edge players and interior players, which Eagles have. And so I think
we talked about Starks possibly playing nickel.
Right, he could. But I think that right now Eagles have Sidney Brown, and I think they're going to want to get a year out of Sidney before spending a first on a safety, especially when you can take a guy like Kevin Winston Jr. or Andrew Makuba in a later round. Or I guess Latham Ramsden would be more strong safety type. Taking a later safety, you could get a safety in a second or third round, or a fourth if you want. That would make me feel better and use a premium pick on a premium position in edge or interior defensive line.
Well, according to various sources, the Eagles plan on making a few trades on draft day. So
Eagles
we don't
always
even
make trades.
know what's going to happen. But again, this is just a hypothetical scenario where we see something pan out well for Eagles fans.
Yeah, I stand by it. I think it should be interior or exterior defensive line. Safety is a later round prospect, and I think a later round pick.
For the Bucs, definitely defense. The couple of scenarios that I thought that would be dream scenarios. A lot of buzz online today after Will Johnson's pro day that teams, or at least people on Twitter, not liking Johnson as much. And so could he
really
see a draft day fall to 19? That is what I would say by the dream scenario, where probably doesn't happen. But man, if it did, like I would be so over the moon to get Will Johnson on
Bigger
my
reaction
roster.
for the Florida win or Will Johnson to the Bucs?
Florida win for sure.
Okay.
Florida is far and away the team that I follow the most and the most passionately. But
How was that winning the Natty?
Dude, so good. And I thought it was so over when we were down double digits and then we got the tech and we already had 5 fouls somehow 4 minutes in the second half. I was like,
Refs hated you.
Yeah. This whole run was tough because that Auburn game was just brutal.
Dude, that was nasty. That was crazy.
But no, it was great. I mean, because all those guys are awesome. They're so bought into the program. Will Richard was the first ever commit to Todd Golden, our head coach, and played amazing in the championship game. Really was the only reason we were in it for the first half was because Will Richard had 15 points in the first half. So just all those guys are awesome. My championship shirt's coming in. So
heck yeah, dude.
We'll shout out Home Field Apparel. You guys are awesome. The other, I guess there's two more dream scenarios. This one is a little more in the realm of possibility. Jihad Campbell, linebacker from Alabama. Definitely think he would be a great pick there. Levante David's older, and he's just the best linebacker in this class. Or pure linebacker. Depends on how you rate Walker and where you put him. But as far as pure off-the-ball linebackers, Campbell's the best one. And then really any of the edge rushers, I was trying to think what a dream scenario would be. I guess somehow if Shamar Stewart was there, I personally would love that. He's my number 8 overall player. Michael Williams is a little more in that range. I had him in the teens. So I don't know if that's the dream scenario, but I would like that pick, just getting an edge rusher to pair with Yaya Diaby. So that would be the teams. Actually, well, Ryan, I want to give you a second here. If you did want to hit on the Raiders, they have a fun pick at 6 where they've been rumored to be linked to a lot. I was gonna say a lot of different players, right? Like there hasn't, I don't think, been one consensus Raiders pick yet. So Ryan, give me a couple of dream scenarios.
Do you want to take a quarterback and sit him behind Geno?
No.
Okay.
I think dream scenario is obviously Genty. I think Raiders fans have been dying for some juice. I think the last above average running back they had was Marshawn Lynch. And that was in the Gruden days. And I know for a fact that Genty would elevate this team to where it needs to be. Some other scenarios, Jalen Walker would be perfectly fine. I actually would love that as well because of the lack of linebacker depth in the class and the fact that they really didn't sign any in free agency. It was a huge miss.
Actually lost one, right, to the Patriots?
Yeah, they lost Spillane. So
shout out to the Patriots for spending all their money.
I know. Don't know what the Raiders were thinking there, letting Spillane walk, but it is what it is. And then Will Johnson, just any corner help. I could actually see the Raiders trading down, but obviously you need a team to trade up to trade down. I think the most plausible one is Genty at the moment, and the one I've seen the most. We've all seen the storyline of the Raiders, the new GM John Spytek, his son being like, "You're an idiot if you don't take Genty." So I don't know if that gets under his skin at all. Come here next week, but those three would probably be the three I'm looking at.
Last time a teenager told their dad to do something about a running back, Saquon ended up in Philadelphia.
This is true.
I still feel bad for all of those, like the kids of the GM. What's the GM's name in New York? I'm blanking.
Joe Shane.
Shane, yeah, all of Shane's kids going to school, knowing like that their dad traded Saquon Barkley, and like Nico Harrison's kids going to school in Dallas, knowing that their dad traded Luka Doncic.
Tough scene.
Brutal.
Tough scene. Before we get out of here, and we'll do this real quick because we are approaching an hour and a half here on the recording. But just open the floor. Anything else that stood out, whether it was you were wildly high on a player, ended up being wildly low on a player, or you thought you were going to be really high on a player and ended up being on consensus with the other two people.
I'm just going to get this out of here. Elik A.O. Manor, Stanford receiver. I have a 50. I love the guy. I feel like he kind of plays a Nico Collins-esque game. I think he's going to be a very quality wide receiver 2 in this league. And if you both hate him, you both can suck it. I'm not taking as crazy of a stance as Ryan has in Jalen Royals, but he is one of my favorite players. And I think that's about it. Most of my, unless you want to call me out on something, Ryan, it's gotten heated today.
I have plenty to call you out on.
Do it.
For example, Baron Sorrell, not even making your big board.
Close. Very close. Did not, but he was close. Didn't you have him like?
Yeah, I have him at
70s?
41, and he was one of my favorite prospects.
Tyler has him at 93.
Yeah, I don't know what consensus is. Aaron, you could probably look it up real fast.
Absolutely.
But he was one of my favorite players that I watched at the Senior Bowl. He had a little bit of smoke at Texas, but I actually really enjoyed it, and I think he could be a solid day 2 guy. I'm not saying he's going to sneak in the first round.
Ryan, I want you to guess what consensus is for this guy.
Consensus probably 60.
151.
That's atrocious.
I'm closer to consensus than you are.
That is terrible.
I would say that's low. Now, I wouldn't, obviously put him at 41, but
I mean, apparently his peak is 125, which is where I have him. Not to the number, but that's the range.
Trying to see who else. Tyler, do you have any?
Yeah, I guess this is only off by one person. I really like Jordan Burch. Oh, here's the one that I was really thinking of. Omar Norman Lott. So you guys both have him in the 60s, 61, and 66 respectively. I just didn't see it. And so he was not on my top 100. Like, not as much juice as I thought. I thought I was going to go in. I typically like the smaller defensive tackles that are really twitchy, explosive, and blow stuff up. And that's what I thought he was going to be. And then he just did none of that in the games I watched. So really tough. Jared Ivey was 44 on Aaron's list. Man, did I not see that. A big guy, tested really bad. Was when I compared him and watched Ole Miss games for Walter Nolan and Prince Monmielen and Trey Amos and some of those guys, he just did not stand out at all. Didn't play great at the Senior Bowl. That was not a guy that I loved. Those were I think the two that stood out. I mean, obviously we talked about it in the safeties episode. I'm way higher on Makuba. Just think he's a violent player and a really instinctual player. So I think he's really fun. And will be a good safety for as long as he can play / nickel. But I think those were the big ones that stood out. Ryan, Cameron Williams, I know you were talking, was one that you would like to go into because you're way higher than we have him.
Before he does that, a few guys that I think we should hit on. Birch is the highest he's ever been according to consensus at 69. Ryan, you didn't have him ranked, right? If I remember correctly. And then Jared Ivey, consensus, peak at 58, currently 119. Which is a crazy drop-off. Josiah Stewart, 76. I believe we have him at like 101, 102.
Yeah, because I was the only one to have him at 8. Oh, never mind. You had him at 84. So it's 82 for me, 84
Always
for
doubting
you,
me.
34.
Always, just like my mother. Always doubting me.
For Ryan.
We were really low on the Ohio State guys, which I think is interesting, between Tua Maloau and Sawyer. But Ryan, go ahead and hit yours. I just wanted to point that out.
Well, I loved Cameron Williams. I can't even remember if he was Senior Bowl, but I remember falling in love with him with his film. I liked a lot of the tackles. The only one I didn't like really was Ursery, which you guys were higher on. But Cameron Williams, desirable physical traits. I
Not Senior Bowl.
Okay, good, because I didn't want to misspeak because I don't think I remember him being at the Senior Bowl. But Cameron Williams, desirable physical traits. Could probably use a good solid year of coaching and could be a reliable day 2 tackle that would eventually become a starter. I don't think he'll start immediately, but he could be that guy that steps up to the plate if someone goes down. So I have him at, I think, 50.
50 even, yep.
I think he was even top 50 when we first did our big board with our original top 50. But I can't remember off the top of my head. But he was someone that I've stuck through with on this entire process, and same with Sorrell.
Last guy that I wanted to talk about, because he was just one of my favorite watches, and I don't even know if he will be a really good player, but I had Danny Stutzman at 87. Just a really fun guy to watch in the linebacker class because he actually reads stuff out, plays instinctual. You don't see that a lot in the linebacker class this year. And so he's got to work on his tackling and finishing, but he gets to the spot more consistent than any of the other linebackers that I watch besides Campbell and Walker. So just wanted to highlight Stutzman there. And that's going to be the end of our episode. We're just kind of naming guys that you guys are probably not wildly interested in because they're second and third round guys. But it's fun for us because we put all this work in. We watch all these guys. And so we do want to highlight them when we think we found that diamond in the rough. It is such an exhilarating experience when you go, wow, I'm 30, 40 spots higher than consensus on this guy. And I think I just see it, right? I think that's one of my favorite things in the draft process, or the opposite, where you're like, man, this guy is supposed to be the 22nd overall player. Like, I don't think I would take him with a second round pick. You know what I mean? It's fun to do your own work, look up your own stats, and come to these conclusions. And I think that's why it's been so fun with you guys. Like, as much as we joke with each other about my Makuba take, Ryan, your Jalen Broyles take, like, I don't know what Aaron's been crazy about, but he's been a little more understated, I think. So as much as we joke around with that, like, that's what we do it for, is to be able to stand on our opinions and stuff that we really believe, which has been so fun. And I think is borne out in this consensus big board. So thank you guys for listening. Again, we'll put this out on Spotify as normal. And we also have the website up there Aaron's talking about. I'm sure we'll probably put that even in the episode description. And we will link that there so that you can look at our linebackers. We'll have our consensus big board up there as well. Check us out on TikTok. But in the meantime, mind the gap on your way out.